Hello, I am Pope Innocent IV, and today I wanted to talk to you about the Lord and his teachings, both from where they stem and the reason we pray. There was a time in history where men and women were left out of work and were forced to be led astray. These were times where you had two career options if you were lucky. There was working for someone who paid you pennies on the dollar, or you served your king or fiefdom in the affairs of war, being little respected or held in admiration by your peers or employer. That while all your efforts may be allowed to be repeated for the wage you are allotted, the day comes back to you having the same goals, to break bread with your family and be still at peace while the world was caught in the fires of change. I ask you today to reason with yourself about what crimes you have committed against others, because there is more to you than your mistakes. You are still alive, and there is ample time to find retribution with the Lord for the mistakes you have made. It was your pact with God, a goal to correct what harm we have done, and it is in this we find salvation. There is no wisdom in erasing yourself with the smudge of sin. There is no reward for tampering with the success of others. We seek ourselves in such a path to walk with God, or it is yours to be forgotten, to be condemned to the servitude of the devil, acting with such ignorance that could only bring the lessons you learned from a masochist. Likewise, or is the path you have found yourself on already helping you to see that if your neighbor intends down a dangerous path, that you should warn them of the horrors they may endure? When I was a child, there was a man on the television. His name was Earl. He spent his life stealing and robbing the livelihoods of others for personal gains, doing the devil's work for little to no rewards, either in the short term or in the long run. With everything he did, he had only two options: go to jail or stay in jail. And in the end of his spree of transgression, the man decided on one thing: that he would spend his life correcting the damages he had done to others. And seeing the error in his ways, he knew that being good to third parties for the wrong he had done to one and himself, he saw that to make himself right with his community, there was his path to salvation. A list of every person he had wronged in the path he had to follow, and this made him become in time whole again and right with God. As when you let down your fellow man, your community, and your government that allows you to do so much as call the police or go to the library, you let God down in ways no man can express. Now, the reason I go by Pope Innocent IV is because Pope Innocent III was so influential on my life that in finding a correct way to discuss these topics, there has to be a man who took some of the credit. Pope Innocent III was a man of great responsibility and weight in that time. His words were so influential that when there was a possibility of uniting the world under Christianity, he found in the people a workforce of those who were not only incapable of absolution, but were likely destined to find themselves in the same place that their journeys began. Pope Innocent III was tasked with and in the charge of most dictatorial powers in Europe in the years 1198 to 1216. And the men were few and far between that would fight a holy war to conquer nations that today promote the degradation of women and the perpetuation of poverty through both the witness of abuses and the cultural ambiguity towards truly moral behavior. Now, with that task in mind, there were two options: find men from the villages who needed a wage and had no grasp of violence, true greenhorns to the sight of blood, or look within the prison walls, a men who spent their life killing and stealing, extorting money from farmers and aligning themselves with the devil's advocates. These men, these human beings with no chance at redemption, were called to arms as the very face that could bear bravery, if not that they would be an expense to the kings either way. It was their only hope to find redemption through the raw and traumatizing efforts of battle. That if they were to be right with God, it would be fighting a war to see the effort, if accomplished, nourish and stand in line with God's plan to have the people choose their path, each woman and child free to decide where they stood with God autonomously, to truly become a morally upstanding being, or be forced to bear witness to the corruption of faith that to this day has led the peoples of this region into poverty, despair, and right into the loving embrace of the devil. Proverbs 4:14. Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not proceed as evil men. Proverbs 2-8. Guarding the path of justice, he preserves the way of his godly ones. Proverbs 1:15. Son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your feet from their path. In all array, we find ourselves at an impasse, that when we do it all, we are not only judged, but are expected to judge ourselves. And for such be judged by others, as all God's creatures are born equal. It is in our decision that we see what it is to be slighted, to be in the path that would lead us astray from God. We spend our day seeking peace as the farmers did 1,000 years ago. But is that what we deserve when we seek to understand not what it means to be courageous, but merely that of the sight of blood, to wash the stains of a crime before we forget that we are all tasked with deciding whose path we walk in? God's or the devil's? I ask you today to find a new fire within yourself, that you must attest to the harm you have done, not to a priest, but with God, wherever he lay, and look within yourself to find the strength to confront those you harmed if you have transgressed, and make not only peace with them, but peace within them. And for those who have done no wrong, look within yourself and your community to become more than just a bystander, but a participant in the standing of your community. Learn how to stand up to injustice and be prepared when you call the police for there to be repercussions. We live in a world where you could face the same harm you reported to the officers at the station for simply having done just that. That when you see your neighborhood torn to pieces by criminals looking for little more than you make in an hour. When you see the hooded men stalking a young woman, you not only stand up to them, but ensure that there will be no chance in hell, that there will be no consequences in their life. Call the police, call to those in danger, and say, I am here, and I will bleed for you, and with this in mind, that you not only stand by your fellow man, but you find a pace alongside God in heaven. Because a world in chaos needs someone to extinguish the disorder and distinguish between where they stand with God. If you let a man die because you were scared, you will die scared, scared as that man was, until you find a way to make it right with them. And in all senses, your having been is not a gift, but an interview. No matter what you will live on, become a new man in birth. But who do you deserve to be? Where do you deserve to be as one who stood by and forgot that you have the authority of the violence of 10 men inside of your pocket? The Lord was not there alone, but all whom he stood with stood as one. Then say to yourself, is the path of the righteous filled with the fearful, the weak, or the disheartened? Or is those who said, that I will shepherd my brothers through the valley in the shadow of death, show that I walk God's path, when I lay vengeance upon those who would poison and destroy my kin? That is all. I hope you enjoyed my sermon. Have a good night.